The red alert blared through Mars Station Alpha, startling the night shift crew. Tom Wilson, the senior operator, nearly spilled his coffee as he studied the unusual readings on his monitor. The deep space sensors had picked up something massive moving through the Kuiper Belt, far beyond Neptune's orbit. "Control, this is Wilson. You need to see this," he called out, his eyes fixed on the screen. The signal was unlike anything in their database, a massive energy signature spreading across multiple sectors. Station Director Mark Brown rushed to the monitoring station, his face illuminated by the flashing emergency lights. "Talk to me, Wilson. What are we looking at?" "Sir, it's big. Really big. Not natural movement patterns either. I'm counting at least 300 distinct objects, all clustered together." Wilson's fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up detailed scans. The Earth Defense Fleet received the alert within minutes. Admiral Kate Peters stood on the bridge of the EDF Defender, Earth's most advanced spacecraft, as her crew prepared for emergency departure. 6 other ships from the fleet joined formation around the Defender, their engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. All ships maintained battle-ready status but weapons cold. Admiral Peters commanded, "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The journey to the outer solar system took 3 days, even with their most advanced engines running at full capacity. As they approached the source of the signals, the fleet's sensors began picking up more detail. What they found left them speechless. Hundreds of massive ships drifted in the void, their dark hulls reflecting the distant sunlight. Some were larger than anything humans had ever built, city-sized vessels that seemed to stretch for kilometers. But something was wrong. The ships were dark, with only minimal power signatures showing on scans. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Bob Harris called from his station, "I'm detecting life signs. Millions of them. But their power levels are critical. These ships are running on emergency systems." Admiral Peters made a quick decision. "Open a broadcast on all frequencies. Let's see if anyone's home." The response came almost immediately. The holographic projection appeared on the Defender's bridge, showing a tall, humanoid figure. Its skin had a silvery sheen, and its eyes were larger than human ones, but the similarities were striking. "This is High Commander Ray of the Vex Exodus Fleet." The alien spoke in perfect English, having apparently decoded their language from the broadcast. We need help." Over the next hour, the humans learned the Vex's story. Their fleet, carrying the survivors of a cosmic disaster that had destroyed their home system, had suffered a catastrophic failure in their quantum drive systems. They'd been drifting for months, rationing their remaining power, unable to repair the complicated drives that powered their ships. "Our children are dying," Ray explained, his large eyes reflecting desperation. "We have perhaps 2 weeks of life support remaining on our main vessels. The smaller ships, less." Admiral Peters looked at her crew, seeing determination in their eyes. Humanity had never faced a situation like this before, but they couldn't just leave millions to die in the cold of space. "High Commander Ray," she said, standing tall, "I'm requesting immediate assistance from Earth. We have engineers, resources, and ships. We'll help you." The alien leader's expression showed surprise. "You would help us? Without knowing more about us, without guarantee of reward?" "That's what humans do," Peters replied simply. "We help those in need. Now, let's get your people safe." As the Earth Defense Fleet moved into position around the massive alien armada, emergency calls went out across the solar system. Within hours, every available ship, engineer, and resource was being mobilized for the largest rescue operation in human history. On Mars Station Alpha, Tom Wilson watched the sensor feeds with amazement as hundreds of human ships began appearing on his screen, all heading toward the stranded fleet. His discovery had just changed humanity's future forever. The Vex were about to learn an important lesson about their primitive human rescuers. Never underestimate a species that still remembers what it means to be helpless against the universe. Sometimes, the simplest solutions come from those who had to fight their way to the stars. The greatest space rescue in human history had begun, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. The massive hangar bay of the Vex command ship dwarfed the human shuttles as they landed. Chief Engineer Alan West led the first team of Earth's best engineers into the alien vessel. Their footsteps echoed through the cavernous space as they walked past rows of strange machinery. "This is incredible," Alan whispered, his handheld scanner displaying readings that made little sense. The technology around them was far beyond anything humans had developed, yet it sat dark and lifeless. High Commander Ray met them at the ship's central engineering hub, accompanied by the Vex's lead engineer, Trell. The alien engineer's silver skin seemed to shimmer under the emergency lights as they explained their situation. "Our quantum cores operate on principles your species hasn't discovered yet," Trell said, gesturing to a massive cylindrical structure that reached from floor to ceiling. "When they failed, we lost everything. Propulsion, main power, weapons systems. We're running on backup power cells now, but they're nearly depleted." Alan studied the alien machinery, his mind already working on solutions. "Can you show us the technical specifications?" As Trell brought up holographic diagrams, more human engineers spread throughout the fleet, assessing the situation on other ships. The reports they sent back painted a grim picture. "Sir," one of Alan's team members, Dr. Jane Reed, called out, "we've got a serious problem. The life support systems on the civilian ships are failing faster than expected. We've got maybe 10 days, not 2 weeks." The news sent a chill through the room. 2 million lives hung in the balance, and time was running out faster than anyone had thought. Alan's team worked through the night, studying the alien technology. The quantum cores were masterpieces of engineering, but their complexity made them nearly impossible to repair with available resources. The Vex had built their entire civilization around this advanced technology, never developing alternatives. As dawn broke on Earth the next day, Alan made a discovery that changed everything. He burst into the emergency command center that had been set up on the Vex flagship. "The quantum cores aren't the problem," he announced to the gathered human and Vex leaders. "They're just symptoms. The real issue is much simpler: power generation." He pulled up a diagram on his tablet. The Vex jumped straight to quantum technology. They never developed nuclear fusion like we did. Their backup systems are basically giant batteries, but we can replace them with something better. High Commander Ray looked skeptical. "You suggest powering our ships with primitive fusion reactors." "Primitive doesn't mean ineffective," Alan replied. "Your ships are amazing, but right now they're just expensive paperweights. Our primitive technology still works." The debate lasted hours. Some Vex engineers were offended by the suggestion of using such basic technology. Others were desperate enough to try anything. Meanwhile, the clock kept ticking. Finally, Jane Reed broke through the argument with hard data. She'd run simulations showing that modified human fusion reactors could power the Vex ships at 60% of their normal capacity, more than enough to save lives and eventually get them moving again. "We can't wait for a perfect solution," she argued. "We need to act now." The Vex leadership huddled together, discussing in their native language. The human engineers waited anxiously, knowing that every minute counted. Finally, High Commander Ray turned to face them. "We accept your proposal," he said. "Our pride is not worth the lives of our people." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. Earth's factories began mass-producing fusion reactors specifically designed for the Vex ships. Transport ships were loaded with supplies and personnel. A rescue operation of unprecedented scale was taking shape. As Alan watched the first fusion reactor being unloaded from a human cargo ship, he noticed something interesting. Young Vex engineers were gathering around, asking questions about human technology. Their initial disdain had been replaced by genuine curiosity. "Sometimes the old ways still have value," he overheard one Vex saying to another. "Perhaps we have much to learn from these humans." Alan smiled as he returned to work. The real challenge was still ahead. fitting human technology into alien ships before time ran out. But they'd crossed the first hurdle. Now humans and Vex would work together, combining the best of both worlds to save millions of lives. The race against time had begun. The vast engineering bay of the Vex flagship buzzed with activity as human and alien engineers worked side by side. The air filled with the sounds of welding torches and the hum of power tools as they raced to install the first prototype fusion reactor. "Power cables secured," called out engineer Mike Davis, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Ready for the first test." The hybrid power system they'd created was unlike anything either species had built before. Human fusion technology had been modified to interface with Vex systems, creating a setup that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Alan West stood at the main control panel, with Trell beside him. Both engineers had barely slept in the past 3 days, running on coffee and determination. Around them, both human and Vex crews watched anxiously. "Beginning power-up sequence," Alan announced. The fusion reactor hummed to life, its blue glow intensifying. Energy readings began climbing on the displays. Trell monitored the Vex systems. "Power flow is stable. Converting to ship systems now." The lights in the engineering bay flickered, then steadily brightened. A cheer went up from the combined crews as more systems came online across the massive ship. "It works," Mike shouted, pumping his fist in the air. "We actually did it." But their celebration was cut short by an urgent message from the Earth Defense Fleet. Admiral Peters' hologram appeared in the center of the room. "We've got a problem," she said grimly. "Long-range sensors show 3 solar flares heading our way. Class X events. We have less than 6 hours before they hit." The news sent a chill through the room. Solar flares of that magnitude could fry electronics and overwhelm shields, especially on the weakened Vex ships. "How many reactors do we have ready?" Ellen asked, turning to the logistics team. 23 are on site, another 50 in transit," replied the supply coordinator. "Not nearly enough." High Commander Ray stepped forward. "We must evacuate the civilian ships closest to failing. Begin immediate transfers to the vessels with working power." The next few hours were chaos. Human and Vex ships worked together, ferrying civilians from powerless vessels to those with working fusion reactors. The human engineers split into teams, racing to install as many reactors as possible before the solar storm hit. "This isn't going to be enough," Jane Reed said, checking her calculations for the 10th time. "We still have over 1 million people on ships with failing shields." That's when Mike Davis proposed a crazy idea. "What if we daisy-chain the shields? Link powered ships with unpowered ones. Share the shield strength." The Vex engineers initially protested. It had never been done before. But they were running out of options and time. Working at breakneck speed, they rigged power conduits between ships, creating a web of shared energy. The powered vessels would protect their powerless neighbors, using the new fusion reactors to strengthen their shields. As the first waves of solar radiation reached them, Admiral Peters ordered all human ships to take positions around the Vex fleet. They would add their shields to the defense. "All hands, brace for impact." The order went out across all channels. The solar storm hit like a hammer. Radiation levels spiked, and shield generators screamed in protest. Inside the ships, crews worked frantically to maintain power flow through their makeshift network. "Shield failure on Section 7. Someone shouted. Without hesitation, 3 human ships moved to fill the gap, their crews knowing full well the risk they were taking. Their smaller vessels shuddered under the assault, but they held position. Hours passed like days as they weathered the storm. Equipment failed, backup systems kicked in, and still they held on. Human and Vex worked side by side, fighting to keep their shield network intact. Finally, after what seemed like eternity, the last wave passed. As the radiation levels dropped, damage reports began coming in. Several human ships had suffered serious damage. Some Vex vessels had lost peripheral systems, but there had been no casualties. In the aftermath, High Commander Ray addressed the combined fleet. Today we witnessed something extraordinary. Not just the joining of technologies, but the joining of spirits. You risk your lives to save people you had never met. We will not forget this. The successful fusion reactor test had proven their solution would work. But more importantly, the solar storm had proven something else. When humans and Vex worked together, they could overcome anything. The real work of saving the fleet could now begin. In the aftermath of the solar storm, the true scale of the damage became clear. 3 human ships had severe hull breaches, and dozens of Vex vessels had lost critical systems. The shield-sharing network, while successful in saving lives, had strained both fleets to their limits. Admiral Peters stood on the bridge of the EDF Defender, surveying the damage reports. "How many fusion reactors survived the storm?" she asked. 17 operational, 6 damaged beyond repair, Lieutenant Harris reported. The good news is the production facilities on Earth are working around the clock. New shipments arrive every 6 hours. But they faced a new crisis. The power drain from the shield network had accelerated the failure of life support systems on several Vex ships. Alarms blared across the fleet as oxygen levels began dropping in multiple vessels. "We need those reactors installed now." Alan West's voice came through the comm system. "We've got 40,000 people on ship 127 with less than 3 hours of air left." The rescue operation shifted into high gear. Human shuttles zipped between ships, carrying engineers, equipment, and emergency supplies. The Vex, seeing human crews working themselves to exhaustion, began learning to install the fusion reactors themselves. On ship 127, Mike Davis led the emergency installation team. The ship's corridors were dark, lit only by emergency lights and their helmet lamps. The air was getting thin. "Power cables connected," he called out, his voice tense. "Starting reactor initialization." The fusion core hummed to life, but something was wrong. The power readings fluctuated wildly. "The radiation damage is worse than we thought," Jane Reed said, checking the ship's systems. "The main power conduits are fried. We need to reroute everything through the secondary systems." Time was running out. Vex families huddled in the ship's emergency shelters, watching their air supplies tick down. Children clung to their parents, their large eyes wide with fear. Mike made a decision. "We'll have to bypass the safety protocols. Run the power straight through to life support." "That could blow the whole system," Jane warned. "If we don't, these people die anyway." Working together, human and Vex engineers rewired the ship's power grid. It was dangerous, improvised work that went against every safety regulation. But they had no choice. "Ready for power-up," Mike announced. "Everyone clear the junction room." He stayed behind to throw the switch, knowing that if something went wrong, the room would be the first to go. His hands were steady as he initiated the sequence. The ship groaned as power surged through its systems. Warning alarms screamed as circuits overloaded. But slowly, steadily, the life support systems came back online. Fresh air began flowing through the ventilation systems. Lights flickered on across the ship. In the emergency shelters, Vex children cheered as their parents wept with relief. The success on ship 127 proved that even heavily damaged vessels could be saved. But it had been too close. They needed a better solution. In the fleet's main engineering hub, Alan West gathered the best minds from both species. "We need to work smarter, not harder," he said. "These ships were built to work together. We need to use that." The Vex engineers revealed that their ships were designed with interconnected systems. In normal operation, they could share power and resources. This feature had been disabled when the quantum cores failed. "If we modify the fusion reactors," Trell suggested, "we could restore those connections. Create a power-sharing network like we did with the shields, but more efficient." The idea sparked a flurry of activity. Human ingenuity combined with Vex engineering knowledge as they redesigned the power distribution system. What emerged was a plan more ambitious than anything they'd attempted before. They would turn the entire fleet into one interconnected network, each fusion reactor supporting multiple ships. It would require precise coordination and timing, but it could work. As the teams dispersed to begin the modifications, Admiral Peters received a message from Earth. More solar storms were forming. They had maybe 2 days before the next wave hit. "We've got one shot at this," she told High Commander Ray. "If we can't get the network online before those storms hit." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew the stakes. The race against time had entered its final desperate phase. The next 48 hours would determine the fate of 2 million lives. The main engineering hub had transformed into a war room. Holographic displays showed the status of hundreds of ships, while engineers from both species worked on the massive power-sharing network. Time was their enemy as the solar storms approached. "Power Grid Section 1 is ready," announced Mike Davis, his voice rough from lack of sleep. He hadn't left his station in 18 hours. Alan Westentrell coordinated the operation from the central control station. Around them, dozens of teams reported their progress as they connected ship after ship to the new network. "The human fusion reactors are performing beyond expectations," Trell noted, studying the power readings. "When combined with our distribution systems, they're showing a 40% increase in efficiency." But they had discovered something even more interesting. The combination of human and Vex technology was creating unexpected benefits. The power network was evolving, becoming more than the sum of its parts. Jane Reeb burst into the control room, her eyes bright with excitement. "You need to see this. The network isn't just sharing power, it's optimizing itself. The Vex ship's AI systems are learning from our fusion technology." A group of young Vex engineers had started calling it the blend, a perfect fusion of human resourcefulness and Vex sophistication. Ships connected to the network were showing improved performance across all systems. "It's like the ships are talking to each other," one Vex engineer explained. "Your fusion reactors provided the spark, but our systems are building on it, creating new possibilities." The breakthrough came with unexpected side effects. Ships linked to the blend began displaying enhanced shield capabilities, improved life support efficiency, and even better structural integrity. The network was strengthening the entire fleet. Admiral Peters watched from the Defender as another section of ships lit up with power. "How many vessels are connected now?" 143, Lieutenant Harris reported. "At current speed, we can have the entire fleet linked in 30 hours. The storms will hit in 28, she reminded him grimly. Down in the engine rooms of various ships, human and Vex crews worked in perfect synchronization. They had developed their own hybrid language, mixing technical terms from both species. What had started as necessity had evolved into genuine collaboration. Mike Davis worked alongside a Vex engineer named Kine, their movements so coordinated they barely needed to speak. They had learned to read each other's intentions, anticipating needs before they were voiced. "Power coupling stable," Mike said, making final adjustments to a reactor. "Integration complete," Kine responded, moving to next section. In the civilian areas of the fleet, the blend's effects were obvious. Lights burned brighter, air flowed cleaner, and the ever-present fear of system failure began to fade. Vex children watched in wonder as their ships came back to life, stronger than before. But they faced a new challenge. The network's success had created unprecedented power fluctuations. Each time a new ship connected, the entire grid had to stabilize. "We need a buffer," Alan realized. "Something to smooth out the power spikes." Trell studied the problem, then smiled, an expression he had learned from the humans. "What if we use the damaged quantum cores? They can't power the ships anymore, but they could act as capacitors." The idea was brilliant. The dead quantum cores, once their greatest weakness, could become part of their salvation. Teams began retrieving the cores from damaged ships, integrating them into the blend's infrastructure. As the hours ticked by, the network grew stronger. Ships that had been dark for months hummed with new life. The combined fleet was becoming something unprecedented. a testament to what two species could achieve together. High Commander Ray stood with Admiral Peters, watching the transformation. "We thought our technology was superior," he admitted. "But we never imagined something like this. The blend is neither human nor Vex. It's something entirely new." "That's the thing about cooperation," Peters replied. 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2. Sometimes it equals infinity. With 18 hours until the solar storms arrive, they had connected over half the fleet. The race continued, but now they had hope. The blend was more than a solution to their power problems. It was proof that different species, working together, could achieve the impossible. As Section 47 came online, its ships glowing with shared power, Alan West allowed himself a small smile. They might just make it after all. The massive fleet glowed against the darkness of space as the blend powered ship after ship. With just 4 hours remaining before the solar storms hit, they had connected 270 vessels to the network. 30 ships remained dark. "Status report," Admiral Peters demanded, her voice tense. "The blend is stable across all connected ships," Alan West reported from the control center. "But we're hitting a power bottleneck. The remaining vessels are the most damaged. They're taking longer to integrate." On the fleet's outer edge, Mike Davis and his team struggled with a particularly stubborn connection. Ship 291 had taken heavy damage during the first solar storm, its systems almost completely fried. "The power conduits keep overloading," Mike growled in frustration. "We need more time." But time was the one thing they didn't have. The massive solar storms were visible now, their deadly radiation already affecting their long-range communications with Earth. High Commander Ray made a bold decision. "Move all connected ships to form a barrier around the remaining vessels. We'll use the blend's enhanced shields to protect them while we finish the work." The massive fleet began to move, powered ships surrounding their vulnerable companions like a protective shell. Human vessels took position alongside them, adding their shields to the defense. Inside Ship 291, Jane Reed made a discovery. "The quantum core here isn't completely dead," she called out. "It's still got a residual charge." This changed everything. Working with Vex engineers, they found a way to use the dying quantum core's energy to jumpstart the integration process. Ship 291 systems came online in record time. The technique spread quickly through the remaining teams. 20 ships connected in the next hour alone. But as they worked, the first waves of the solar storm began to hit. Radiation levels rising. Lieutenant Harris reported from the Defender. "Shields at 80% and holding." The blend proved its worth as the storm intensified. Connected ships automatically redirected power to where it was needed most, their shields adapting to the changing threats. The network was learning, evolving in real time. With 10 ships still dark, the main wave of the storm struck. The fleet shuddered under the impact. Warning alarms blared across every vessel as radiation levels spiked to lethal levels. "Shields failing on Section 12," someone shouted. Without hesitation, Mike Davis and his team rushed to the threatened area. They worked in the midst of the storm, protected only by their suits' shields as they fought to maintain the connections. "We're losing power to the outer shield ring," Trell reported, his fingers flying over the controls. "Need to redirect energy from non-essential systems." Alan made a split-second decision. Shut down artificial gravity on all military vessels. Route everything to the shields. Across the fleet, crews suddenly found themselves floating, but the shield strength surged. The blend compensated automatically, distributing the extra power where it was needed most. In the chaos, something remarkable happened. The quantum cores they'd been using as buffers began to resonate with the solar radiation. Instead of being damaged by it, they were absorbing the energy. "The cores are charging." Jane's excited voice cut through the chaos. "The storm's actually helping us." The last ships were connected just as the storm reached its peak. The entire fleet glowed with shared power, their combined shields holding strong against the onslaught. The blend had united them, not just through technology, but through shared purpose and determination. Hours later, as the storm finally passed, the damage reports came in. Despite the storm's intensity, not a single ship had been lost. The network had protected them all. High Commander Ray addressed the combined fleet. Today marks a historic moment. Through the blend, we have become more than two separate species. We have become one fleet, one people, facing the challenges of space together. As repairs began on the minor damage they had sustained, engineers from both species were already discussing improvements to the blend. What had started as an emergency solution had become something revolutionary. Admiral Peters watched the fleet's lights pulsing in perfect synchronization. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. The rescue operation was a success, but tell them this is just the beginning. The next phase would be getting the fleet moving again. But now, with the blend linking them all together, it seemed like anything was possible. 1 month after the great solar storm, the combined fleet hung in space like a constellation of stars. The blend had transformed both species' ships into something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. Admiral Peters stood with High Commander Ray on the observation deck of the Vex flagship, watching shuttles move between vessels. "The last modifications are complete," Ray said, his voice filled with pride. "We're ready for the first test of the hybrid drive system." What they had created went far beyond the original emergency repairs. Human fusion technology, combined with Vex quantum engineering through the blend, had produced an entirely new form of space propulsion. In the main engineering hub, Alan Westentrell made final checks on the system. Displays showed all 300 ships linked and synchronized, their power levels steady. "All ships report ready," Mike Davis called from his station. "The blend is stable across all vessels." Jane Reed monitored the quantum core readings. The cores, once thought dead, now pulsed with new life. The solar storm had not only recharged them, but had somehow altered their basic structure. "Beginning drive sequence," Alan announced. "All ships, stand by for power transfer." The fleet hummed as energy flowed through the blend's network. The hybrid drive system engaged, combining human fusion power with quantum mechanics in ways neither species had imagined possible. Slowly at first, then with growing confidence, the massive fleet began to move. 300 ships, 2 million refugees, and their human allies, all traveling as one. Speed increasing. Lieutenant Harris reported from the Defender. "We're already past the maximum velocity of our old engines, still accelerating." The new drive system worked better than anyone had hoped. The fleet could now travel faster than either species' ships could alone, using less power than before. But the true miracle wasn't the technology. In the months since the rescue, humans and Vex had begun building something more important: trust. Cultural exchanges had started, with crews living and working on each other's ships. Earth has approved the Permanent Alliance Treaty, Admiral Peters told Ray. "They're already planning joint research facilities." Ray nodded, his large eyes reflecting the stars. "My people have voted as well. We will not seek another home. Earth has offered us sanctuary, and we have accepted." The decision made sense. The blend had proved that both species were stronger together than apart. Already, their combined knowledge was opening new frontiers in science and engineering. In the civilian sections of the fleet, Vex children played with human toys while their parents learned Earth languages. Human crews studied Vex technology, while Vex engineers explored the primitive solutions that had saved their lives. Mike Davis worked with a team of young Vex engineers, teaching them about fusion technology. "Sometimes the simplest answer is the best one," he told them. "But it's even better when you can combine it with something advanced." The fleet accelerated smoothly through space, heading toward Earth. The journey that had once seemed impossible was now just the beginning of a greater adventure. Jane Reed had started documenting everything they'd learned, working with Vex scientists to create a new technical database. The blend was already spawning new discoveries in physics, engineering, and even medicine. "We thought we were just saving lives," she said during a presentation. Instead, we've started a technological revolution. As Earth appeared on their long-range sensors, High Commander Ray gathered both human and Vex crews for an announcement. When we were stranded, we thought ourselves doomed. Instead, we found not just rescuers, but partners. Together, we have created something unique in the galaxy's history. This is not the end of our journey. It is the beginning. Admiral Peters added her own words. Today marks a new chapter for both our species. The stars are no longer our limit. With the blend connecting us, there's no boundary we cannot cross, no challenge we cannot meet. The great fleet moved toward Earth in perfect formation, its ships glowing with shared power. They had started as strangers, one group stranded, the other coming to help. They would arrive as something new, a united force ready to explore the galaxy together. In the years to come, historians would mark this as the moment when humanity truly joined the galactic community, not through war or competition, but through cooperation, innovation, and the simple desire to help those in need. The stars beckoned, and for the first time, two species would answer that call as one.